In old age, just as in every phase of life, a person faces a profound question about their own being. How can one preserve self-awareness when relationships fade and familiar supports gradually disappear? This question does not come out of nowhere. It emerges when time reveals its unstoppable force, and those who once seemed irreplaceable slowly vanish from one's life. Yet it is precisely at this decisive moment that Kant's thoughts on moral autonomy, on freedom, and on the inner lawgiver gain deep significance. Old age is a test for those who manage to maintain an inner connection with themselves, no matter what happens around them. As Kant said, man must be a law unto himself, not a slave to external influences. In youth, we often forget this, because our happiness depends on others, on family, friends, partners. But old age dissolves this dependence. It does not remove all connections, but it reveals which ones are truly valuable and which ones are mere illusions. This becomes clear when children move out, when friends drift away, when spouses become almost strangers. Those we once saw as our supports turn out to be temporary companions. As Kant formulated it, the only support one can truly rely on is one's own moral strength. In other words, in old age, we must learn not to depend on what is transient, but on what remains within us. Kant calls this the autonomy of the mind, the human ability to act according to an inner moral law, independent of external circumstances. This brings us to the 4 pillars that form the foundation of life in old age. The first is the ability to be alone, without experiencing solitude as misery. Kant understood being alone not as mere isolation, but as a prerequisite for inner freedom. He emphasized, man must learn to live within himself, for the external world cannot bestow true happiness. With advancing age and the fading of external relationships, we must learn to build an inner connection with ourselves. If one does not learn to be alone, life becomes an empty space filled only with chaos. Those who find no peace in their own presence become dependent on others, and life loses its meaning because it is not guided by an inner principle. Being alone does not mean rejecting social relationships. It means freeing oneself from their deceptive importance. A person must free themselves from dependence on the external world to find true happiness within. For example, a woman lives alone in a quiet apartment. Every evening, she sits by the window with a book and a cup of tea. She does not flee from solitude. On the contrary, she fills it with meaning. This is, as Kant emphasized, true freedom, when a person can live in harmony with themselves. They are no longer influenced by external circumstances. Those who no longer fear being alone do not experience solitude as misery, but as true freedom. The second pillar is an orderly daily routine. Kant added that order in everyday life not only makes life easier, but also forms a basis for moral growth. He wrote, "Human existence cannot be free if there is no order in life." This is especially crucial in old age because the chaos of the external world can lead to inner unrest. Order in daily life does not just mean cleaning the apartment or organizing objects. Above all, it means creating inner order, the foundation of moral principles. When a person orders their surroundings, they also order their mind. A tidy home reflects a pure soul. Take an example. A woman lives in an apartment with 3 wardrobes full of unnecessary things. Old clothes to broken ceiling light. Keepsakes she cannot part with. In this case, Kant would say, attachment to the past, frozen in things, becomes a burden that hinders progress into the future. In old age, when time no longer allows opportunities to correct past mistakes, it is crucial to let go of the past, to preserve energy for the present. Kant emphasized purity as a necessary condition for the development of freedom. Those who cannot order their daily life cannot develop inner freedom either. Therefore, order in everyday life is the first step on the path toward the moral law. The third pillar is indifference to the judgment of others. Kant said that true freedom means acting independently of others' opinions. Freedom is the ability to act according to one's own inner law, not to gain the approval of others. In old age, when external ties weaken and the body loses strength, one must accept that others may no longer understand them, that one's life no longer corresponds to other standards. But those who learn to ignore these judgments gain freedom. Kant wrote, "One must learn to say no to the opinions of others in order to preserve one's moral integrity." For example, a neighbor argues with his wife every evening, but claims to be happy. In reality, Kant would say the opinions of others are merely mirrors of their own fears, not expressions of true happiness. As one grows older and realizes that others do not truly understand them, one must learn to live by one's own moral compass. The purest respect arises when one quietly accepts oneself, and that is precisely freedom. Having to justify nothing, prove nothing, simply living as one believes is right. The fourth pillar is fidelity to oneself. The deepest form of freedom. A person must feel that their life has meaning, and this meaning must arise from their own moral consciousness. As one grows older, and others may no longer depend on them, it becomes all the more important to preserve the feeling that one's existence still has significance. This is not about money, praise, or recognition, but about the inner sense that each day counts. Kant said, "The meaning of life does not lie in living with others, but in living with oneself." For instance, a woman puts on lipstick every morning, even though she knows no one will visit her. She makes herself coffee in a teapot just to smell the scent of the morning. Sometimes she reads poems to her cat. It may sound trivial, but precisely such small things give her life reality and depth. Some people grow tomatoes on the balcony, not for the harvest, but for the care involved. Others do gymnastics in the morning so their body does not become stiff. Still others jot down thoughts in a small notebook so the day does not pass unnoticed. Doing something for oneself creates rhythm, and the day loses its emptiness. If a person does not feel important, does not experience themselves as valuable, their life becomes empty. As long as someone finds no meaning in their existence, they remain trapped in insignificance. Therefore, especially in old age, when external relationships fade, it is crucial to find meaning in one's own actions. For Kant, as for every philosopher seeking to understand the essence of human life, it was never only about the external, but above all about inner freedom, independence from external conditions. Old age is that moment when a person confronted with the fading of external bonds can develop a stronger inner freedom. Herein lies the true power of aging. It shows that genuine freedom does not depend on external circumstances, but on how deeply a person is connected with themselves. As Kant said, freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the ability to act according to one's own laws. Those who manage to strengthen these four pillars attain a freedom that forms the foundation of their life. Those who fail will have a life that, as Kant wrote, is an empty space filled only with chaos. Old age, therefore, is not an end, but the beginning of a new phase, a time in which a person must learn to rely on themselves. For as Kant said, man must be a law unto himself, not a slave to external influences.
Salut.